So let me show you how you can optimize your videos for web. First of all, you need to double check if your size is something that is okay. If your video will be shown full screen, so like a background of your website or something, then usually the largest size that you want to go for is the regular full HD, so 1920 by 1080. If your video is a lot larger, you might want to consider scaling it down. You can scale it down directly with the media encoder. I will show you a little bit later where that works, but I didn't have good results with the media encoder. Sometimes you get black borders, and we generally don't want that. So let me show you how to do that with After Effects. First, we take the video and we create a new composition by dragging it onto the new composition icon here. Then we want to scale down the entire composition. We do that by going to File, Scripts, and we use a script that is called Scale Composition. The order of scripts here might be different on your machine. So Scale Composition, there we give it a new width. So here we can choose the 1920, or if you know that it will be only shown half of your page, so like you have two videos next to one another, then maybe just 1000 pixels for the width are enough. So we hit scale and it scales down our composition. Next, you want to double check if your frame rate is acceptable. Right now, our frame rate of the video here is 50 frames per second, and we don't really need this many frames for a website. So here, I would recommend changing this to 25. We do that on the composition here. So we hit Command K to open up the composition settings, or alternatively, you can go to Composition and choose Composition Settings up here. Then in this pop-up, we will go to the frame rate. If this says something else, so 30 frames is fine, 29 point something is fine as well. If it says 50, we go to half of that, so 25. If it says 60, then you want to go to half of that, which is 30. So don't just randomly change the frame rate. So if it's something around 30, keep it the way that it is. If it's above it, like 50 or 60, then you want to divide it by 2. So here, in this case, we can go to 25. By doing that, it might mean that our composition gets longer than the actual video. To fix this, we select the video layer, hit O for the out point, hit N for the end of the work area, then we right-click on the work area and we choose Trim Comp to Work Area. Now our composition has the length of the video. Next, we can finally render this out, and we can send this directly to the media encoder by going to Composition and choose Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. Sending this over might take a while. It needs to open up the media encoder, get the connection there, so let's give this a second. Once the video has been added in the queue, we want to choose the correct container. We do that by going to the arrow here, and we want to choose H.264. Usually the presets that we have here work fairly well. I recommend for most cases, or to start with, to use the very first one, which is Match Source High Bitrate. Actually, no, let's go for this one with the Match Source. So this is what I usually recommend for something that you keep on your desktop. But for the web, let's start with something called Match Source Adaptive Medium Bitrate. We do, however, want to optimize this a little bit further. So we click on the preset here. It needs to connect to After Effects, so this might take another second or so. Okay, so on the right side here, we scroll down a little bit. We want to find the bitrate encoding, and here I usually recommend going for VBR2 pass. It takes a little bit longer to render, but since we're just encoding a video, it doesn't take too long. And we want to keep the frame rate here, not the frame rate, the bitrate here, as low as possible. So for a video that is 1920, I would go to something like 3 to 5. This would be a good place to start. Depending on your video, you might want to increase these values or decrease these values. Since we have something that is a lot smaller, this is not full HD, this is just 1000 pixels, I recommend doing something like 2 to 3. We can see how our video now got down to a file size of 1 megabyte. Then I think the rest of the things should be fine. Usually we don't need to worry about the keyframe distance, the automatic option is fine, and we usually also don't really need to change anything in the audio here. However, you can always reduce the quality here to, for instance, 96, but generally speaking, we can keep it at 129. This was what it was before, right? I think so. We don't hear much of a difference in quality, but we also don't see much of a difference in the file size by changing this anyways. Okay. Lastly, we just decide where we want to render this out. So right now I haven't saved my file, so it would render into a temp folder, as we can see here, which we obviously don't want. So if you have not saved your After Effects file, make sure to define where you want to save this to. So for instance, the desktop. Oh, maybe I call this one small. Oh, well, whatever. Oh no, it's fine. And then we hit the play button here to actually encode this. And that's it. Now we have a much smaller version of the video that is prepared to work well on a website.